Well, good morning, kiddos. Um, so glad to see you this bright and early morning. Uh, I've missed you just a little bit, well, kind of a lot because I have been bored. So, welcome back. Today, you are super in luck because we're going to start a new unit, and it, of course, is called Wuthering Heights. Hopefully, y'all have just kind of enjoyed yourself over this restful break. But let's go ahead and get this party started. Maybe some of you have heard of these folks right here. Look familiar? They're, of course, Edward and Bella. Oh, it was a time that just we couldn't get enough of Twilight. There was another one called True Blood, and True Blood has Sookie and Bill. It's a couple of years old now. Don't watch it, it's not kid friendly. And it's kind of weird too. There was a place or a movie or a show called Vampire Academy. There was Blade. You can kind of go on and on. There was Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Um, Before The Walking Dead, before Twilight, before Vampire Diaries, there was this book called Wuthering Heights. Um, at first glance, you're going to be like, oh my goodness, this is so horrible. Okay, Wuthering Heights. Oh, forgot to do this. Oh, just kidding. Go back, go back. All right, hopefully you can see me right here. Okay, Wuthering Heights looks like this. See it? Wuthering Heights, Emily Bronte. Hopefully you brought this book home with you. If you did not, you could probably find it online for free because it's about a bajillion, zillion, trillion years old. Just kidding, it's only about 150, but I'm pretty sure you can find this online for free. If not, you can go back to school this week and pick it up or probably order it through Amazon. All right, anyway, continuing on with what I want to say. At first glance, you're going to see Heathcliff. You're going to meet this guy. He may look like that traditional, or maybe not so much the traditional vampire that you've kind of grown to know, to love, but he does have a lot more going on for him. Wuthering Heights is going to revolve around passionate, destructive love between a woman by the name of Catherine Earnshaw and her tall, dark, brooding, handsome man, Heathcliff. Uh, Forget the romantic dinners, the roses, the chocolates, the bachelorette-esque idea. Catherine and Heathcliff's love exist on an entirely different plane. Sorry, this is a little bit harder than I thought it was going to be. Um, this love is one that focuses on ghost, on corpse, on the communion or possession of souls, and of course, revenge. That sounds exciting. Take a deep breath. All right, before we get started though, reading this book, I want you to know a couple of things. First of all, this is a 19th century novel. Now, what does that mean? Well, it was written in the 1800s. Okay, if you know anything about 19th century novels, you're going to know that it's longer. It has a definite complexity of sentence structure. There's lots and lots of description. And there's, of course, vocabulary. Yikes! This vocabulary is going to look more like something out of an SAT or ACT book, but of course it is out of Wuthering Heights. So just hang with it, okay? All I'm asking you to do is try. Next thing you're going to notice is there's names. Lots and lots and lots and lots of names. Now, if that's not bad enough, a lot of the names are very close to each other. And there's some that are even duplicate names. And so as we go on with the story, I will give you, or I'll send you, or I'll share with you a family tree or a character tree, so to speak, to help you figure out those things. The last thing about Wuthering Heights you need to be aware of is the absolute coolness factor. What, do you ask? Well, some of your friends have read Twilight. Bleh. Some of your friends have read other vampire-esque stories, but you're going to win because you are going to get through this 19th century amazing novel. All right, before we start with that though, give you a little bit of background about Emily Bronte. Now, she, of course, was born in England in 1818, and she grew up near the Yorkshire Moors, which is actually more towards Scotland in that area. She never had a formal career. She was never married. She was somewhat secluded from society. Okay, she wasn't really an Emily Dickinson hermit, but she was kind of along those same lines. She was the fifth of six children. Her sister, Charlotte Bronte, wrote a little novel by the name of Jane Eyre. If you haven't heard of it, look it up, or you'll probably read it in college, whatever. Um, Her mother, though, died when she was only 3 years old, complications during childbirth. So that meant that she was being raised by her minister father. He was very strict evangelical minister, and so she didn't really agree with all of those ideas. One of the things that was very interesting about her was, or at least I found interesting, she's actually the tallest of all the Bronte sisters. She was a whopping 5'8". I laugh. I wouldn't squash her, but let's say I could beat her in height. She was extremely intelligent. She taught herself how to play the piano. She taught herself how to speak German. Don't really know how you teach yourself to speak German, but hey, good for you. She did write under a male pen name, and the male pen name was Ellis Bell. Now, why did she do that? Well, a woman writer was not something that was really even heard of back then. And even though it sounds kind of like archaic, ever heard of Joanne Rowling? Well, Joanne Rowling is actually J.K. Rowling, and J.K. Rowling wrote under the pen name, or Joanne Rowling wrote under the pen name J.K. because she didn't think a book about um, wizards and warlocks and Harry would be something kind of be popular coming from a woman. So believe it or not, this is still a thing today. Emily Dickinson, though, I'm sorry, wrong one. Emily Bronte, going back just a little bit, she was a very stubborn woman, so much so that when she would not get her way or when she disagreed about something, her protest was to stop eating. She would try to starve herself. I do not have that problem whatsoever. Other things, she refused traditional doctors. When she developed tuberculosis, we knew that what it was, or they knew what it was during that time period, yet she refused to go to the doctor. So 2 years after writing Wuthering Heights, and after a few months of suffering from tuberculosis, Emily Bronte dies. Okay, but that doesn't mean that we don't have one of the greatest novels or English novels ever written. Okay, as usual, need to give you a little bit of background about the Victorian period because to me that really helps kind of set the idea of the novel. So without further ado, here we go. Victorian period was kind of intermixed with the Romantic period, and which we'll talk about that a little bit later. This period lasted from 1832, that would have been super long, 1832 to about 1901. This was named after Queen Victoria. Sorry, I'm getting text if you hear that. Named for Queen Victoria, who ruled England for 63 years. She was the longest ruling British monarch, with the exception of Queen Elizabeth II, who of course rules today. Couple of things that you need to be aware of is England during this time became a huge industrial nation. Ever heard of the Industrial Revolution? Kind of that, except of course it was in England. They had an era of booming economy, prosperity, material progress, and overall it reflected this huge idea of optimism or self-satisfaction. During Victoria or Queen Victoria's reign, Britain expanded the empire, became the most wealthy, most powerful nation in the world. Victorians were very prudish. Okay, one of the things I found really interesting, and you'll see it reflected in this novel as well. Sexual relationships were never discussed. Men and women did not go on dates. They did the very traditional, pretty much either meet at the altar or the groom and the bride's father would kind of work out a deal, kind of like an arranged marriage. Um, Men and women, of course, actually on the beaches, even though it was not kind of bikini season or even tankini season, they actually swam in different parts of the beach. Adulterous women, of course, were ostracized from the society. Men, however, still got to be a part of it. Think about Scarlet Letter, Nathaniel Hawthorne, remember? Last year, American Lit, one of the greatest American novels ever written. Hester Prynne, of course, was ostracized because of the actions and, of course, because of the birth of Pearl. Same kind of goes for this time period in Britain. Now, one of the things that I found really interesting as I was doing the research for this, I don't know if exactly I believe it because there's kind of contrasting views, but supposedly Victorian people actually put the covered the material or the furniture legs with different types of materials so they can maintain decorum because they didn't want any leg showing. Don't know. Take it with a grain of salt, but I did think it was very interesting.